Welcome one and all to the Success Curious podcast. It's your man Andy here, and today, campers, we are going in a bit of a different direction when it comes to success. Evan Lucas is an economic futurist, a keynote speaker. He's a best-selling author of the amazing book Mind Over Money, and amongst other things, he's a podcast host and generally a stand-up chap who takes a different angle when it comes to the financial world and from a personal point of view, and I think becomes a bit of a lighthouse in terms of what I see. I see Evan as a lighthouse when it comes to anybody that is really struggling to grow a connection with money, grow a comfortable connection with money. And it's something that I know a lot of people struggle with, which is why I've got the great man onto the show. Evan Lucas, thank you so much for joining us on the Success Curious podcast. How are you?
Andy, that's a lovely intro. Thank you very much. Nobody's called me a lighthouse before. That's I like that. That's an interesting way of putting it, because yeah, it's an interesting thing, money and relationships and actions and behaviors and what have you. That's all my world. And I know, what you do here with, Success and Curious is understanding what that is. And part of what I always argue when people ask me about how do I get better with money, I'm like, well, it's not really that. It's like, is it part of your success? Like, because that also, just before we go into delving in, and you and I are about to wax lyrical, I can tell this for the next half an hour, which is, the question realistically for your listeners and for your viewers is, what's rich versus wealthy? And I think that's also part of when somebody asks me that question is like, how do I get better with money? It's like, well, no, the question I probably have for you, are you wealthy or are you not? And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, do you want to be rich? And like, yes, I do. I said, well, being rich in our world is defined as somebody that has a lot of money but doesn't actually know how to use it. They either overspend it, have inherited it, don't respect it, outwardly display it in ways that aren't necessarily in healthy, physiological and psychological ways. Wealthy, on the other hand, is having, and you and I've discussed this off air on things like LinkedIn, wealthy is having the ability to have financial autonomy, which is the ability to have your life and self-choices self-chosen and self-endorsed, which basically means you have the ability with your money and your wealth to do what you want, when you want, how you want. And that I would argue, if you've got that, then you're successful. And that therefore answers that sort of part of that question, which is, from my perspective, being wealthy does not mean you have to have, 8 digits, 9 digits, 1,000-digit bank accounts or assets. It's having the financial freedom and the financial autonomy that makes you feel wealthy, that can enjoy the life that you have.
Team, I don't know if your pen's already smoking on the notepad, but it bloody well should be. This is going to be a massive, massive episode, I think, for a lot of people, because I'm sure you would have seen ad nauseum, Evan, the number of people that just have such a poor perception relationship when it comes to money, and it creates such a barrier to the entry when it comes to happiness in one's life, right? Mm-hmm. It creates so many hurdles for so many people in so many different ways. Before we dig into it, though, man, for those
careful
people
with that question, I will go hardcore on that.
Oh, mate, we're going hardcore, mate. We're going D&M real fast. But before we go diving in down that Alice in Wonderland hole, mate, let us know, let the listeners know who you are and a bit of a background, please.
Yeah, so as you said, I'm an economic futurist, and the way I describe that is that, look, my background is behavioral economics. So I did actual health science at university, majored in physiology and majored in pathology, also did a psych major at the same time, went straight back to uni, did an MBA in applied finance and economics. And then I ran off to Amsterdam and worked over there and worked in economics, and found the behavior side was creeping in pretty much in everything I was doing over there. So I took that, ran with it, have been doing that for a while. What I've also got into more and more and went back and did more study on that too is demographics. So demography is also part of it, because what I will talk about quite a lot is that human beings are really, really bad at equating forward time. So seeing the future is something that we can't do. Everybody loves to make, fun of my title saying, all right, get your crystal ball out. And I'm like, that's a fair comment. It's an absolute fair comment. But the way I also put to them is this, is like, if you're 40 years old, what does 30 feel like to you? Does it feel like yesterday? Does it feel like a couple of years ago, etc.? And most of them will tell you it feels like that. It feels like a couple of years back. Can feel my 30th, can see what it was, enjoyed my 30s, etc., etc. I'm like, cool. What does your 50s feel like to you? And they're like, well, that's still ages away. I'm like, well, it's actually technically closer than your 30s because every second you tick by, you're getting closer to your 50 than you are to your 30. And then on top of that, the demographics also means that, you know, you are constantly going through changes through your demographics. You are in your 20s and you're probably single, mid to late 20s, possibly a couple, maybe even married or not, doesn't matter. Into your late 20s, 30s, and late 30s, you know, your couple becomes a child family, two-child family. You can't buy time and stop it, but you can gain time. And so the demographics, when you look at the economic behavioralism and the demographics together, that's where I get to where I am. And so I've been doing that now for about 15 years. You'll hear very clearly that I love to talk. And that is sort of the other thing about, like, so on the economic side is there's two ways to look at economics. There's a lot of ones that love to do the research and data digging, and then there's the communication side of eco. And that was always the part that I always jumped into. So that's sort of roughly me. And I've always tried to basically, again, get back to my own mantra I spoke about before with autonomy. It's not just about finance. Autonomy is, as I said, your life's decisions are self-endorsed and self-chosen. And this is what I wanted to do. And away I went. And, you know, then they also talk about, you know, you got lucky. Well, yes, that's true, but you create your own luck. So I spend a lot of time in the media and I love being in the media. It's a lot of fun. It you know, suits my personality. It suits what I do. And, you know, going around and being on, you know, News Breakfast or Sunrise or the Today Show or what have you, just, again, allows me to promote my message and promote what I do and who I am. And that is basically that. Getting back to your point about money, everybody's perception of money will be different. Not only that, it will be, some will have positive and negative reactions. Some will see it in silos. Some will see it in a collation of abundance, all in between. All I'm here to talk to you about is that actually it can be really easy. It can be quite enlightening. And it can be a tool for good rather than a tool for bad, depending on how you look at it.
They do say that money doesn't make you successful. It just simply exposes who you are to a greater extent. So if you're a good person, money makes you better. And if you're a bad person, money can turn you into a real arsehole.
Yeah, and I'd even go more than that, right? I would still go back to what I said to you before. Money doesn't equal success. Money is a companion to success, right? So
nice.
Again, I wouldn't, you know, so this, what you're asking me, Andy, is the other thing that I love talking about. So for instance, in economics, etc., the word value has many, many different connotations. So when you hear what's the value of that, and let's use your world, right? So your other world is property, and working in the property world. Somebody came to me in the last couple of days and spoke about the fact that, you know, Australia's fair value of property is now 30% over what's received as fair value. And I said, hang on, how are they working out fair value? And they said, oh, it's the median house price by the median rental income. I said, well, that ignores immediately other parts of value. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, value is not just capital. Value is time. Value is belief. Value is effort. Value is lifestyle. Value is all those things. And if the net effect of those other values, plus or minus the capital value, is X, then fair value is that, not the fact that the median house price is giving you what's realistically a price to earnings ratio. If you want to go down the full on like economics / markets thing, most people are not buying a property for an investment. Most people are buying a property for shelter / home. And therefore the value of it is the land size, the age of it, the size of, and the lifestyle it's going to give you, the education access it's going to give you. So value there is completely different to that concept. And again, so companionship, money is a companion of success. You don't have to be a multimillionaire to be successful. That, I think, needs to be made very clear.
You're absolutely spot on, and when you talk about it, like in terms of, for example, going to a restaurant, right?
Yeah.
And and something, it doesn't matter how much something costs, it is deemed expensive or cheap based on your perceived value of what it is. So if it could be a bloody $500 for a couple meal, but because the experience was so incredible and, you know, life defining and all the rest of it, you won't see it as expensive, you'll see it as value.
Yes.
You know, a burger from Macca's, for a lot of people, they'll say it's
Doesn't
cheap,
have the
but
same value.
yeah, but in that moment, it's valuable enough because it fills a hole and it does a job, right? So,
Correct.
you know, so you don't see it as cheap. You just see it as value for that moment.
I love that point, right? So this is a point I love to make as well, because that value, interesting question is when you get a lot of people, for instance, that have, and you can see it very clearly, that they have, let's call it the colloquial term, sort of a keeping up with the Joneses perception about, you know, what they do. You know, I never can do what they do. How do they do that? I said, why do you care? Here's a better question for you. Okay, you're talking about them, for this example, on taking business class flights to Europe, for example. If I was to say to you, you could do that too, would you do it? And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, if you had the ability to go and take a business class return trip to Europe, would you do it? And they're like, oh yeah. I said, but you could do that now. Technically, you could do that now. I'm sure if you've got, you know, $5,000 in your bank account, you can do it, right? That's how much it's going to roughly cost. But the reason you haven't done it is because you don't actually see the value in paying $5,000 for a return trip to Europe in business class versus going economy and going anyway. Or you don't even see the value of going at the moment because the overall value in your life experience and what have you is not making you take that plunge and spending that capital. So it's the same concept. You can apply it to everything, right? So in terms of that thing, is that, again, for you personally, your value equilibrium, let's call it that, hasn't been reached, and therefore the value is not there to actually exercise the capital that needs to go into it. So the funds, the money, blah, blah, blah. And you're right. It's the same with, you know, at the moment, post-COVID, experience is becoming much more valuable because people are realizing that the long-term memory value, the long-term experience that gave you, and the successful enjoyment it gives you is actually something to be banked. This is the term I like to use, is that you keep remembering that, right? You keep living it and the sensation it gives you. Whereas the good that you could have bought with that money, that $500 to go out to that restaurant that you'll remember forever, I bet you won't remember it as anywhere near as much as the experience. And that's been, for me, an interesting behavioral economics change, because you've seen that. You know, the spending on overseas travel through 2022 and 2023, when rates were going through the roof, actually grew. So 2.1 times increase 2023 and 2024 international travel, despite the fact that history would normally tell you that in that period, we normally would slow our spending down. We went harder because COVID clearly told us, again, I hate the term, but we'll use it, YOLO, and the experience return, and therefore the experience gained and the value gained is much, much higher than possibly sitting on it and saving it, understanding that, you know, there was that. And again, we're not here to sort of advocate spending and spending and spending. That's not what we're saying here. It's an invested value that gives you experience in your mind forever, and that money isn't wasted. You see the value in it, but it's not for everyone.
I think, right, this is where we start going down a rabbit hole, mate, and going off piece.
We already have.
We already have, yeah. So I really want to dig into this this notion of what is value for a person, right? Because then you can break it down into what is short-term value versus what is long-term value. You know?
Yes.
And you know, is the short-term value of that experience worth the investment from a long-term value perspective, right?
Yep.
And so what are the sort of questions, this is fascinating, what are the sort of questions that would you suggest people ask themselves when it comes to this notion of value? So take money out of this is interesting, because this is supposed to be a money podcast, right?
No, let's not do that.
Money, but it's actually more about value, which is really the question at hand here. So what sorts of questions do you think people can ask themselves when it comes to equating value? Because a lot of people, and it sort of ties in with the topic that I really wanted to talk about, which is scarcity versus abundance, right?
Let's do that.
Yeah, so from a mindset,
because I was going to literally answer it that way, right?
So, yeah, wicked. So talk to me about this. So what can we do? How can we sort of calibrate our decision-making processes around this notion of value on the short term versus long term, and then bring that scarcity piece into it.
Yeah, or actually what I'll try and bring into it is abundance. So again, scarcity...
Which is probably more a reflection of my current mindset, shall we say.
But yeah, so scarcity and abundance, pessimism, optimism.
Yep.
Not only that, scarcity mindset and scarcity in general is immediate creation of loss. So let me go through it in a slightly different way, which is that, Andy, I'll say it to you directly, but for those listening and watching, think about it the same way. Let's say right now, Andy, you put your hand in your pocket and you managed to put your hand in there, and all of a sudden you found a lovely pineapple $50 note, crisp $50 note you didn't know was there. You'll get an elation out of that find because you didn't know it was there. Studies show for up to about 3 to 4 hours. Let's say you put the $50 back in your pocket. It's been there. You've got the little buzz out of it. And then tonight you put your hand back in and you're like, oh, what the hell? It's gone. It's fallen out of my pocket. Where's it gone? You search and search and search and it's lost. Studies show that you'll dwell on that loss for up to a week.
What? Really?
So another way to put it to you is what's called the loss aversion study, which is what this is. Human beings are geared to scarcity, right? They're geared to it. Another way to pay it to you is this. I guarantee I'll give you $900 or I'll give you $1,000, but there's a 10% chance I'll give you nothing. Don't give me the answer, but just think about it. And I've got a fair idea what you're going to say. I'm going to flip it on you. I guarantee I'm going to take $900 off you, but I'll also say I'll take $1,000 off you, but there's a 10% chance I'll take nothing off you. What would you do?
Oh, no.
So that the majority, in fact, almost every single person will choose the guaranteed $900. Locked in. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Right. And I guarantee that every one of you listening and watching would have gone, well, I'm already losing $900, so I'll take the gamble and I'll do the $1,000 loss for the 10% chance.
Yeah.
Where the rational hold card economic maths is that you should actually do the complete opposite, which is you should take the $1,000 risk of gaining because the actual perceived real outcome is still $900 on the maths. And on the flip side, it's a guaranteed $900 loss. So you need to minimize your loss by taking the guaranteed $900 rather than guaranteeing yourself basically a $1,000 loss because there's a 90% chance you're going to lose $1,000. So scarcity is baked into us. And not only that, scarcity creates gambling and gambling fallacy, which is exactly what that is. Abundance is the flip side. If you can start to see how much you have in a much more holistic value, it actually keeps creating abundance and creating more and more sort of understanding that you've actually, your wealth or your overall success or whatever metric you want to put into it continues to grow almost compound interest exponentially without you even having to try. So let me take it in another way. Getting back to your point before about value and where the value is and about short-term and long-term. The best way to think about this is time, as I said before, human beings aren't great at time, which is part of the reason why something like superannuation is a great way of helping you with it. I talk about it on the form of today, tomorrow, and beyond. Your overall capital, so I'm not going to just say money, your overall capital has to be spread across time. You don't need every single cent that you have in value today. You just don't. You're not going to be spending every single cent that you have in the next 24 hours. You're just not going to do that. Nor are you going to be spending it in the next year off the bat. Because your superannuation, for example, in this country spreads you out to beyond. Because you could be retiring in 5 years if you're 62, because obviously your retirement age is now 67. It could be 15, 20 years away if you're in your 40s, or if you're in your 20s, it's 40 to 45 years away. That's an eternity. But that money is sitting there waiting for you. But it's yours. It's still part of your overall capital. It's the same with things like your house, right? So your house is your asset. It is still yours. And despite you paying the bank some interest repayments every month, the value of the property is yours. And one day you will sell it. At least you should, because you should get the capital back. But that could be tomorrow. It could be 3 years. It could be 5, or more likely than not, it's going to be 10. So what's the value of your house? Then what's the value of your bank account? Because that's today, and not only that, next week or the week after, your income's coming in, you're getting paid. So you've got today money as well, when you actually start looking at all of it together as a collation, all of a sudden you can go from having, I don't have any money and a scarcity thought process to an abundance mindset. There are apps all out there that can basically collate your entire overall wealth position, but don't worry about that. What I'm trying to say to you is that if you can look at your superannuation balance, your value of your property, you might have a portfolio of something else, a term deposit. It might be you have shares. You might have all sorts of other little bits and pieces. When you look at the total value of that and the fact that it's growing because it'll be exposed to some form of interest repayments or income or capital growth, then that mindset changes for you. And that's what you're asking, Andy, is that how do you deal with today versus the long term? So getting back to that question, you said right at the start of my pre-ramble, which is that the value today of going on that overseas trip can actually, inverted commas, buy you happiness or buy you success, because it's using the today money to give again, the asset that it will create for you. Because that's what, the way I always say this, money isn't actually worth anything. And people's like, what the hell are you talking about? I said, it's just like electricity. It's like potential, right? So you work, your employer gives you cash that you then have to turn into another asset to be exercised, right? So it's as simple as if Andy was to pay me $50 and then I went to the supermarket and bought $50 worth of goods, all I've done is turned $50 of work for Andy into $50 worth of goods. It's the same concept if you were to take your work and buy your overseas trip or buy that thing that's going to give you that. Because sitting on physical cash does nothing, right? It is literally a potential. It's an IOU or whatever acronym or sort of, whatever you want to use it to be, sort of having that sort of concept around. It doesn't matter. And so therefore it's yours. I'm not telling you to spend it. What I'm saying is that you're just turning it from a cash asset into another asset. So whether that's investing in your home and buying a home, whether it's putting it into your superannuation and topping up your super, whether it's to put it into a cash balance account in your bank that starts earning interest and therefore it's growing itself, or it is going on that $500 restaurant experience that you were talking about before. What I'm trying to say is that $500 that you use today, if your money is spread across time and balanced out between today, tomorrow, and beyond, the whole abundance of it will actually therefore cover that cost if that's what your worry is. It'll take away the scarcity mindset. It'll stop you from thinking, I can't do that. And then what I sort of haven't said very well, but I'm trying to say, which is money sitting on physical cash is basically the same as putting it under the mattress. It's never going to do anything for you unless you actually use it in a powerful way. And by powerful, it is using it to invest. It is using it to pay off your credit card. It is to make sure that you've made financial planning, but it is also to make sure that you do get to experience the value that the capital can give you for those other values that we've discussed.
I love that. There's so much.
Sorry about that. That was long.
Mate, there's so much to dissect out of that, which is, but in such a good way. That was so value rich, ironically. Seeing money as potential, I think, is really, really important. I think seeing money as just merely a vehicle as opposed to a status symbol, I think is tremendously important for a lot of people.
Can I just go on that? Because I just want to drop you on that. And I think that's also clear as a status symbol, right? So that gets back to that rich v wealthy perception, right? So spending money for a status is a scarcity mindset, right? Is a scarcity world in what we refer to it. So going out and buying that bling car or that bling what have you, that isn't what you and I have just been discussing. That does not necessarily equal success. In fact, I would argue it definitely equals the opposite, because it's the fastest way to end up in debt. It's the fastest way to end up being broke. And I need to use that quite strongly. Success and money success, as I said to you, comes back to that ability to have the choice to take that $500 restaurant night, or have the choice to have that experience, or to have the choice to buy the thing that you need in your mind for value, but not doing it in a way that ends up being a burden.
Yeah. So let's go down this track a little bit further. So, for a lot of people, and let's bring it into let's look at it from a societal point of view, and I'm going to throw in demographics afterwards.
Yeah.
So from a societal point of view, there is obviously that perception, that narrative around success being the car, the jet, the tan, the this, the that, the other, the blah, 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 that humans have put up there on a pedestal via social media, right? And we're not going to blame social media because it's an inanimate object. It's the humans that have put it up there, right? I really, really like.
Plus the irony of the fact that you and I are doing this through social media, sort of, promotion, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, but I think that for a lot of people, they have they sort of. I really like the jab, the barb that you threw in there just quickly, where you said the bling, the watch, the car, the this, the that, the other. It actually demonstrates a scarcity mindset, when for a lot of people, the misconception is that demonstrates an absolute wealth of abundance, right?
Yeah.
I find that fascinating. That's a really interesting, I think breakage of wiring that.
Let me explain that a bit further for you, right? So let me use a study. Let me use one of the most famous ever studies in this kind of world was by the Federal Reserve of Philadelphia, which found that the most likely people to go bankrupt are the neighbors of lotto winners. And think about that. What are they doing and why are they doing to go broke? So what they don't realize is their neighbor has come into luck and into fruition through no direct input of themselves. They've just got lucky and they've won the lotto. And then what happens in those scenarios when you have a very large windfall, spending goes through the roof. So they're doing the renovation on their house. They're buying the bling car. They're doing whatever it is. And then it creates a movement of what's, let's again just keep it simple. It's an ego thing, right? So some people would talk about it from the point of view that it brings in psychological heuristics, which is true. It brings in things like self-attribution, all this other kind of rubbish. It's ego, just call it that. And then they try and keep up, right? So you then have that scenario where that want, that need that I don't have, so I've got a scarcity, I don't have it. I've got a scarcity mindset, so I need to go and get it. That is what it leads to. And that's why I say it's a scarcity mindset to be doing that. Because if I don't have it, why don't I have it? I should have it. I deserve it. All of those kinds of thinkings. That's a scarcity thought process. I don't have. So it leads to it's harsh, but it's true. It leads to irrational decision making. And that's what it is. It leads to irrational decisions, buying things you don't need, spending capital on areas that, let's get back to what we've been talking about from the start, the value of it actually doesn't help, right? Does that car actually give you the value that you want? I'd say no. I mean, I know I drive a nice car, but the reason I have the car is not for that. It's just because I need it to go across a whole range of things and we only have one. So therefore the value is net zero. It's not necessarily positive or negative for me. Again, the way I would say it back to you, if you're going to get that car, what are you getting it for? Why are you buying that, massively expensive overseas holiday when you could do it for, a fraction of the price and take a little bit of, capital out of it. And then when you get there, enjoy it as much, if not more. All of that is the scarcity concept, is that I don't have, therefore I should be able to get it. Leads to that, and that gets back to that study, which is that the neighbors don't understand that it's a windfall. It's not through effort. It's not through anything else. They've just got lucky, and nothing that the neighbors did should have led them to do that. But ego gets in the way, and as they always say, money doesn't kill families. Egos do.
It must really, really frustrate you, Evan, to see then a lot of these coaches and gurus on the internet, they harp on about creating an abundance mindset and highlight it by
how much they've got.
Talking, by recording a reel from their roles, or
which is probably rented.
Yeah, well, this is it, right? And this is sort of something that really needs to be broken. And I love this key point that you've said, which is, the stuff actually highlights the scarcity mindset, right?
Yeah.
Now, the counter argument that a lot of these coaches and perceived experts and blah 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 will say is, no, that is just a reflection of my brand of me. It's a reflection of my DNA. My brand is quality. My brand is high-end luxury. Therefore, this is a representation of my brand, and that's how I want my brand to be seen, like brand me.
Yep.
So
and my response to that is that's fine because that's what you value. But how much debt have you gone on that? How much, getting back to that sort of $1,000 loss with 10% no loss opportunity, are you taking? Because clearly, to have that lifestyle, you're pretty acceptable with risk, right? To get those ones you're talking about, right? So those influencers, TikTokers that are showing about how successful they are and what they've done and how they've acquired XYZ, they are really, really happy to take risk, really happy, and they're really risk assertive. So again, let's use your world. Let's use property. So one of the rising things in sort of mid-20s, late 20s-year-olds is rent vesting, but on steroids.
Yeah.
So rent vest, as I refer to it, where, they're like, if you don't rent vest, you're a mug, is what they'll say to you. This is how you do it. You can go and buy all these properties if you work really, really hard and then rent to where you want to live. They're spending $4,000 or $5,000 a week to live in these kinds of spaces, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason it works for them is because they're happy to take the risk. I mean, again, all that they're doing is what you've got to get it back to the very, very basics of finance, which is that they're gearing themselves, right? So they are, whenever you take out a mortgage or a property loan, it's what we refer to as gearing. You are borrowing money or borrowing capital to buy an asset that you couldn't normally afford or that you're trying to leverage yourself up onto. You can do it in an equity market, but it's just not accepted at the same level as it is in property. So the difference that I would say to them, absolutely, that's what you value, that's fine. But you also value risk, and you're very, very happy to take risk. And that's a rare person, right? So a lot of people cannot cope with or do not accept taking that level of risk. I mean, could you imagine telling yourself that you have a $5, $6, $7 million debt facility overseeing the properties that you hold, and the amount of work and effort, and therefore the amount of interest per month that you have to pay? So how much rent you're getting, the dealing with the rental issues that come with across the states, across this country, then dealing with all the regulation, and then on top of that, paying for the lifestyle that you therefore are perceiving as your brand. That's a lot of financial risk. And so to those of you out there listening that are watching them going, how come they have that and I don't? Well, because they're happy to do that. And I would say this, that is not a lifestyle that most people can accept or live with. You will not sleep, I promise you. It is not success. It's just a way that, and a scenario that those people can take, and it's a very, very small fraction of the population that can do it.
Would you say that, so you could argue then, therefore, that the defining factor on value is the ability to handle the relevant amount of risk that comes with that decision?
Partly. I mean, again, let's walk away from property. Let's just look at success in general. Like, does making CEO or silk, if you're in law, or a judge, or the head surgeon at certain places, or the head medico at a certain hospital, or the head engineer, whatever the hell it might be, right? Again, I've just picked them out of the air. Is that truly success to you? And that, again, gets back down to that value. Is that what you value? Is career success your value? By all means. Is money success by having all those properties and being able to cope with the leverage that comes with buying into all that risk in property? Is that success? Then if it is, that's your answer. And I'm certainly not here to tell you not to do that, because if that is your success, then you've done it, right? So getting back, the flip side to that, the argument to me is, congratulations, you've done what you see as success. So then I get back to the simplest way to say it to you. Warren Buffett, right? Let's use Warren Buffett because I think he's a beautiful example. And he openly says this. Warren Buffett sits about the 7th or 8th richest person on the planet. And as he points out, all he ever wanted to do was to invest his money and to invest. He's been doing it now for 74 years. The man is 96 years old. And the majority of his wealth started when he was about 67 because of compound interest taking off. What he openly says is that that was my dream, that was my goal, and that was what I wanted to do to be successful. It is not everyone else's dream. Those of you that are trying to be me, ask yourself, is that actually what you want? Because if it is, by all means, come and have a chat and we'll talk about it. If it's not, that's also a good answer, because it will not make you happy to be as rich as I am. And as he points out, in 2004, he donated 80% of his total wealth, and he's now made that back almost 1,000 times over. So, like, staggering in terms of how good he is at what he does and how he could reinvent himself. But as he's at pains to point out, and I do it too, that's his dream. It's not yours.
So it comes back to then the question, the true question that comes out of all of this podcast, this entire episode, is the need to be able to define value in your existence, right?
Yeah.
If you can define,
I mean, realistically, what we're saying is, can you be happy in your own skin? I mean, that's the way to say it to you. I mean, and that it's just money, as I said, it's just there as a relation. It doesn't equal success. It's there as, basically just to help and to be an assister to your success. Can you be happy with what you have? And therefore, once you are happy with what you have, abundance will come. And money no longer has to be a worry. Money is just a conduit to making yourself do what you want, when you want, how you want.
So, Evan, if you were to put a definition on value in your world, what is it?
So again, as I said to you, the definition in my world is financial autonomy. So for me, all money is the potential for turning it from one asset into another. And that asset, that second asset, can be anything. It can be an experience. It can be a portfolio. It can be a home. It can be a car. As long as the value, therefore, it creates, or the value it has allowed you to do what you want, when you want, how you want. So the action has been self-chosen and self-endorsed, and therefore the value it's created from making that choice has led to success.
Honestly, man, this is we could talk for.
I told you we'd wax lyrical for a while.
Hey, so now, I want to ask, before I ask you the final question, which we ask all of our guests, and my editors, Adrian, who we both know quite well, he's going to shit kittens because I haven't asked you formally what your definition of a successful human is, but we've already answered it, right? So good luck trying to find this one, Adrian, if you're listening.
Adrian, let me say that, right? Let me say it straight out, what I say the definition of a successful human is.
Go.
Somebody that is sees their life as abundant, that is happy with the abundance in their life. And that is a successful human.
Gold. No, very few people, right? It's interesting. Of all the definitions, very few people have associated success with abundance.
No, I know, right? So again, because of the way, and what we didn't get into today, and it's probably something for another day, but in particularly masculine nuclear cultures like Commonwealth countries, the US, etc., so very westernized countries, success is a linear pole, right? It is about climbing the pole, or whatever pole that happens to be. And therefore, I'm super successful because I've developed this company. I'm super successful because I'm CEO. I'm super successful because I'm rich, didn't say wealthy, or because of X, Y, Z. And there's a cause effect in terms of what I'm saying there. It ignores the fact that that doesn't mean that they're happy. That doesn't mean that they've achieved what they actually genuinely wanted to do. It's just that basically the concept was put in front of them and they ran with it. I would say that, a successful human being is somebody that sees abundance in their life and has the ability to therefore see everything that they have done and everything that they will do into the future, being the futurist that I see, as that overall choice that they want to do. Because that's what it is. It's about abundance.
Love it, man. Absolutely love it. Before I ask you the final question, what is one thing that Evan's purchased where in that very few people see value in and think you've been a bit of a dick in getting it? But in your mind, you've just been unequivocal. Like, I know that this is ridiculous, but I love it. and I see value. What has been one thing where you've just gone bananas?
Where I've gone, but okay, so for me, that's an interesting one because again, I am fairly, and I know my personality quite well. I'm quite strategic, is the term, with how I
Yeah.
spend. So
Yeah.
the way I would answer it though is that my own, again, let's talk about brand, right? This is the answer to your question. My brand in my 20s was I was the guy that experienced and traveled. So as soon as I made money and I had a certain amount of money, I would get on a plane and I was gone. So I went and lived in the UK for a year and a half as soon as I finished school. Like I didn't even graduate. I had literally already gotten a plane the day after school finished. So I did the speech night and I was gone. Didn't even know what I got in my year 12 results. Off I went. As soon as I got back, because I had to, because I ran out of money, straight away went through university, as I spoke before. And as soon as I could, I got an opportunity in Amsterdam and went and worked over there because my whole brand was that. But it wasn't sustainable because it would be save, earn, spend, zero, repeat. Right. So it was an unsustainable, constant spend. And therefore, people were like, how are you going to do that? You're never going to be able to buy a home and all that kind of stuff. And admittedly, I was like, actually, that's true. I'm not going to buy a home, but time helps you and you realize you can do all that kind of stuff and blah, blah, blah. But that would be the answer to your question, is that I was living an unsustainable sort of brand, which was constantly being that guy who was overseas, constantly being that guy spending his money on travel. But, and I want to answer it this way as well, but the value that I have got from those years, so 18 through to about 26, 7, is priceless. It is priceless. The learning experience, the education I got out of it, the self-understanding is priceless. Everybody can see the capital and how much capital I blew. The life experience and the life understanding into where I am now, priceless.
Incredible, man. Incredible.
That's great.
Absolutely incredible, man. Now, one final question. As we all venture forth towards our next destination that success has taken us on, we've all got stuff that we need to work on, right? We're all there. We're all got stuff we need to work on. If there's one thing missing from your game right now, Evan, that you need to bring in, what would it be?
Being even with how I work and being more sort of confident to take more risk. And by what I mean by that is that actually understanding that I need to actually probably put more effort into taking certain strategic risks in the direction of my vacation, not career, vacation, to take that next level up. Because I'm touching it, but I am probably not being assertive enough and risk assertive enough to make my next jump, to actually go from being where I am right now and understanding that I can actually be that next level of success because I see the value in it. It's not going to bring me more money. I don't want it to bring more money, but it's going to bring me more strategic happiness. And that's the term I use for it because I love doing what I'm doing. I want to do more of it. And therefore, I just need to be a bit more risk assertive in taking the leap to get to that next point.
Awesome. I love that. Again, very, very unique answer, man. Very, very unique answer, which is amazing. I love it, man. I absolutely love it. Evan, I'm loath to bring this episode to an end because I just want it to continue on, man. You're an absolute bloody joy to have a listen to, mate. And I love the obvious level of passion and wisdom and the difference in your approach towards money with the psychology background and all that sort of stuff, behavioral science and whatnot, I think is absolutely fascinating and one that we need to dig into further at some stage. So thank you so much for joining us, man. I'm sure there's an absolute well of notes that's been taken off this one. Thank you so much.
And it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for entrusting me to come on to your incredible podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, team. I'll tell you what, if you're not following this guy at the end of this episode, you're nuts. You need to be following him. You need to be catching him on LinkedIn. I'll make sure that you've got all the access to him as possible via the show notes. And just go, he's a podcast host by him, in himself. So make sure you go and have a look at his podcast as well. I'll make sure I link that up too. Team, until next time though, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, stay abundant, and get in and really have a think about what that definition of value is to you, because that might help you break a couple of barriers towards success when it comes to the fiscal side of things. Until next time, team, look after yourself. Speak to you soon.